Hello students and welcome back to Top Scholars. In today's session, we are going to discuss the PYQ questions, that is the previous year's questions from the year 2023 to 2025 on the chapter Control and Coordination. Okay, so let's begin with it. Okay children, so let's quickly look at the mark distribution of this topic between the years 23 to 25. 1 marker questions were asked in all the 3 years, 23, 24 and 25. 2 marker questions were asked in year 23 and 24 and 3 marker questions were asked in year 24 and 25. So as we can see, the weightage in year 2023, the weightage of this topic was total 3 marks. In 24, the weightage was 7 marks and in 25, the weightage was 4 marks. So roughly between 4 to 7 is the weightage of this chapter. Alright, let's quickly discuss these questions. First, we'll talk about the year 2023 and start with 1 marker question, that is your MCQ. That is, select from the following the correct statement about the trophic movement in plants. Option A, it is due to the stimulus of touch and temperature. Option B, it does not depend upon the direction of the stimulus received. Option C, it is observed only in roots and not in stems. And option D, it is a growth related movement. And the correct answer over here is option D, that is, it is the growth related movement. Now, let's see why the other options are incorrect. Children, the trophic movement, first of all, it is observed both in root and stems. Therefore, option C becomes incorrect. It depends upon the direction of the stimulus received. And therefore, option B is also incorrect. And option A, which says that it is due to stimulus of touch and temperature, it is obviously incorrect. Therefore, the correct answer over here is option D. Alright, now let's move to the next question. Now we'll talk about the 2 marker question asked again in the same year, that is 2023. And the question is, write the role of insulin in regulating the blood sugar levels in the human body and mention the disease which is caused due to it. So over here we need to mention about how the insulin works in controlling the blood sugar levels. Next question is, how is the timing and the amount of release of insulin in the blood regulated? Alright, let's look at the solution of this. Children, when the blood glucose increases, which is after you have meals, alright, so when the blood glucose level increases, so a signal is sent to the beta cells of the pancreas, and in response, the beta cell will secrete insulin in the blood. Alright, so what is happening? When the blood glucose level increases, there is insulin secretion in the blood. Alright, now children, remember insulin is like a pusher hormone, meaning, so when glucose is present in huge amount in the blood, alright, and insulin is secreted. Insulin, let me draw insulin over here, this is the insulin for example. Insulin will push this glucose into the fat cells and in the liver cells, muscle cells and so on. That means it will push all this glucose outside the blood. Let's take for example, this is a fat cell. What will this lead to? Can I say that by pushing out all the glucose inside the cell, the blood glucose level reduces? Yes, so that's exactly the function of insulin. Insulin reduces the blood glucose. And how does it do so? By pushing all the glucose out. I hope the function is clear. Now children, let's take an alternative scenario that the blood glucose level reduces. So, for example, you didn't eat food for 7-8 hours or you fasted for entire 24 hours. In case of no digestion, no new glucose is produced or it enters into the blood cell from there, right, from the digestive system. So, in this case children, what happens? The blood glucose level drops. Now, this is not a good condition for our body. because when the blood glucose level drops, the glucose delivery to the cells reduces. And when the delivery is reduced, the ATP production reduces and that organ is struggling. Out of all the organs of the body, the brain is the first one to struggle very quickly. And because of which we may feel dizzy, we may feel weak, we may even faint. Alright. So children, whenever the blood glucose level reduces in our body, a signal is again sent to the pancreas and specifically now to the alpha cells. Now, as the alpha cells gets the signal, it produces a hormone which is known as the glucagon. So, again I will write it over here. When the blood glucose reduces, there is secretion of a hormone known as glucagon. And the action of glucagon is completely opposite to insulin. So, in this case, what will glucagon do? It will push the glucose from the cells into the blood vessel, and as a result of which what will happen? The blood glucose will increase and the glucose in the cell will decrease, and therefore we can say the action of glucagon is to increase the blood glucose. I hope you are clear, children, with this. Alright. Now coming to the second part of the question, that is the timing of its secretion and the amount of its secretion. So, when will the insulin be released? When the blood glucose level increases. That is usually after having our meals and on completion of dilution. Next part was how much amount of insulin will be released. It will also depend on how much glucose levels have increased. So, if we have a lot of sweet food which are rich in glucose, the blood glucose level will shoot and so will the release of insulin shoot. But if we have a very small meal, the release of insulin will also be small. I hope we are clear, children. Let's move ahead. Alright, now let's look at the next question which was asked in 2024, which is a 1-marker question. That is, in a nerve cell, the site where the electrical impulse is converted into chemical signal is known as. So, we are supposed to identify the site. Let's look at the options. Option A is axon, option B is dendrite, option C is neuromuscular junction, and option D is cell body. So, let's look into it. Children, let's quickly draw a structure of a neuron. Okay. Okay. So, over here we can see two cells. One is a great neuron and this is a muscle cell. Children, what's the function of a neuron? A neuron is supposed to generate and conduct an electrical impulse, right? So, let's say the dendrites, they have generated the electrical impulse and they are also conducting this impulse all the way to the axon. So, now this impulse is being conducted all the way into the axon, into the axonal branch and into this knob-like structure which is known as the synaptic knob, right? In the synaptic knob, children, we have sacs which are filled with chemicals, and these chemicals, they are known as the neurotransmitters. So, when this electrical signal, it is conducted through the axon and into the axonal branch into this synaptic vesicles, it will lead to release of this neurotransmitter which is a chemical from the neuron. And this neurotransmitter will be delivered to this muscle cell. This neurotransmitter, children, it's a chemical which is carrying some command from the neuron which will be given to the muscle cell, and as the muscle cell reads the command, the muscle cell will contract. Alright. So, over here, children, we can see this electrical impulse is converted into the chemical impulse, that is by release of the neurotransmitter. And this is happening at the junction of a neuron and a muscle. And this junction is known as the neuromuscular junction, and therefore it is the site where the electrical impulse is converted into the chemical signal. Alright, children. So, here we can see a beautiful diagram of a neuron, right? This center part of the neuron, this is known as the cell body, where we will find the nucleus. And from the cell bodies, we see these tiny branches which are coming out. These are known as the dendrites. Dendrites, they receive the electrical signal from another neuron. Alright. Therefore, the electrical signal, it moves from the dendrite towards the cell body and from the cell body towards the axon. So, here we can see the entire length of the axon, which is surrounded by the Schwann cells, right. Now, this electrical impulse which is traveling through the axon will enter into this axonal branches, which are also known as the telodendrons, and finally it will enter into the synaptic knobs. Alright children, so here we can see this is the end of the telodendron and this is the synaptic knob. Now, in the synaptic knob, we see a lots of these chemicals. These chemicals are known as neurotransmitters. Alright, and this structure is the mitochondria. Now, children, what will happen over here is that the electrical impulses and the sodium ion which are moving inside the axons. This electrical impulse will push the neurotransmitter to exit the axon. Alright, and these molecules of neurotransmitters, it will exit the neuron and it will reach the muscles where they will bind with the neurotransmitter receptors. And in this sense, the information which this neuron was bringing will be provided to the muscles and the muscles will contract. Alright. So, this junction children that is formed between the synaptic knob and the muscle, this junction is known as the neuromuscular junction. Alright. So, at the neuromuscular junction children, as there is release of a chemical which is known as the neurotransmitter, we say that the electrical impulse is converted into the chemical impulse. Therefore, the correct answer is the neuromuscular junction. Okay. Alright. So, the correct answer is option C, that is the neuromuscular junction. Okay. So, let's move to the next question. Now, this is a 2-marker question. Let's read the question. How is the movement of leaves of a sensitive plant different from the downward movement of the roots? Or, there is a hormone which regulates the carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolism in our body. Name the hormone and gland which secretes it. Also, why is it important to have iodized salt in our diet? Alright children, so let's start answering the question. The first question, it asks us, how is the movement of leaves of a sensitive plant different from the downward movement of roots? Children, the root, they show a phenomenon which is known as positive geotrophism. What is positive geotrophism, children? It is the movement of roots towards gravity. It is moving in a particular direction. Alright, which is not the case with the movement of the leaves. The movement of the leaves in a sensitive plant is non-directional. It is because of the changes in turgor pressure. Alright, and therefore the movement of the roots is different from the movement of the leaves. Alright, now let's move to the next question. Let's read this question. There is a hormone which regulates the carbohydrate, protein and fat metabolism in our body. We have to name the hormone and we have to name the gland which secretes it. Next part of the question is, why is it important for us to have iodized salt in our diet? So, let's quickly answer. The name of the hormone is the thyroid hormone, which is also known as the thyroxine. Alright, this is responsible for the metabolism of the carbohydrate, protein and fat, and therefore we say that the thyroid hormone, it maintains our BMR. What is BMR? BMR is a basal metabolic rate. In simple words, it means that it is responsible to control all the chemical reactions which is happening in our body. Okay. Which gland produces thyroid hormone? It is our thyroid gland. Alright, and the next part of the question is, why is it important for us to have the iodized salt in our diet? So please remember children that thyroid hormone or the thyroxine is made up of two main things. It has amino acid known as tyrosine, alright, and when this tyrosine is binded with iodine, only and only then the thyroid hormones are produced. That means that the iodine and the tyrosine, these are the raw materials of thyroid hormone. So, if we take iodine in our diets, thyroid hormone will be made by the gland. If we do not have enough iodine in our diets, then the production of the thyroid hormone will also decrease, and that will reduce all the basal metabolic rate in our body. Alright, and that gives rise to a disorder which is known as the goiter. Yes, I hope this was clear. Alright, now let's move on to the next question. Now we will solve a 3-marker question which was asked again in the year 24. Let's look at the question. Define reflex action and with the help of a flow chart, show the path of reflex action such as sneezing. So first let's understand what is a reflex action. Children, reflex action is a automatic, involuntary, sudden or quick movement to a stimulus. So like for example, you were in your kitchen trying to see what your mom has cooked and you suddenly see a tawa. Now you don't know whether it is hot or cold, right? And you just decided, okay, let me pick up the tawa and keep it in the sink. And when you touched it, suddenly you realize it's hot. Now you quickly withdraw your hand, right? Did you think that you should withdraw your hand to protect yourself for burning your fingers? No. And that exactly is a reflex action. A reflex action is not a thoughtful action. You don't think about doing that movement. Getting it? So, it is not a thoughtful action. It is not a conscious action. You just did that movement. It is not a conscious action. You just did that movement without even thinking about it. That is your reflex action. Why is it important? It is important because it helps in survival. See, imagine if you had to think, okay, now I need to withdraw my hand, and then that command from the brain goes to your finger muscle and then you pull it. By then you would have damaged your fingers. You would have burnt your fingers a lot. Yes or no? So, such mechanisms exist in our body to do a quick movement to protect ourselves from being harmed. Alright. Now, let's look into the reflex pathway. So, when we get a stimulus which irritates our nasal passage, like for example, there is some dust particle which has entered into the nasal passage while you were inhaling air. The receptors which are present in the nasal passage will detect this irritation. On detecting this irritation, it will send the information to a sensory neuron that carries the message to the spinal cord or the brainstem. Alright. Now, a relay neuron which is present over there will process and understand this information that there is some irritation going on in the nasal passage. Relay neuron will then tell the motor neuron to generate and send this motor command to the muscles involved in sneezing. And as this motor neuron brings that command to the muscles will contract and suddenly expel the air. And that exactly is your sneezing. Okay, so what has happened? When some irritant enters into our nose, there are some receptors who gets irritated, and once they get irritated, they will send this information through sensory neuron to the spinal cord or to the brainstem. The neurons over there will process this information, meaning it will analyze what has happened in the nasal passage, and it realizes, okay, there is some irritation and we need to remove this substance which is causing irritation. Now that neuron cannot travel down, right? So the relay neuron will send this command to the motor neuron. The motor neuron from the spinal cord will descend down to the muscles which are involved in sneezing. It will command these muscles to contract and you will loudly sneeze and expel the air, and along with that even expel that irritation causing substance. Are we clear? So, sneezing is a reflexive action. Not just that, children, even coughing is a reflexive action. Okay, all these are protective mechanisms of our body which keeps the tracts clean. Alright, now let's move ahead. Coming to the year 2025, there was a 1-marker question asked, that's a MCQ. Let's look into it. The plant hormone whose concentration stimulates the cell to grow longer on the side of the shoot which is away from the light is option A, cytokinins, option B, gibberellins, option C, adrenaline, and option D, auxins. The correct answer is option D, that is auxins. Now let's see why the others are incorrect. Children, cytokinins, they mainly help in cell division and especially in the ends of the shoot or at the ends of the root. Alright. Gibberellins, children, they also help in elongation of the stem, but along with that they are also involved in seed germination. Adrenaline, children, these are the hormones not found in plant. It is found in animals that helps in protecting our body during emergencies. Alright. So, by eliminating the first 3 answers, we come to the auxins. Now, let's understand how does auxin play a role. So, children, let's say this is a plant over here. It is falling in this direction. So, the plant will naturally bend over here. What happens is, children, the auxins will travel from this light portion. This is the light portion where the sunlight is falling towards the shaded portion which is this side. And it elongates the cells of the shaded portion because of which the plant will even bend more towards the sunlight. Alright. So, I hope this is clear. The next question is of 3 marks. Let's look into the question. Plants have neither a nervous system nor muscles. Even then, they respond to the stimuli. For example, the leaves of Chui Mui plant, that is the touch me not plant, when touched begin to fold up and droop. How is this information communicated in the touch me not plant? Next, what enables the plant cell to bring out such observable response or movement to the stimulus? Next question, differentiate the movement mentioned above from the movement of the tendrils in a pea plant. Alright, children. So, let's start answering this question. First is, how is the information communicated in the touch me not plant? Children, it is by sending the electrochemical signals from the point of stimulus to the other part of the leaves. Next question, what enables the plant cells to bring out the observable responses? They are producing some movement because of the change in the turgor pressure. Like for example, children, the leaves may curl or the leaves may droop. Why is that so? So, the turgor pressure or the water in the cells of the leaves, they may move out of the leaves, and as a result of which the leaves may fold or the leaves may droop, thus showing a response. The next question is, differentiate the movement mentioned above, that is in the touch me not plant, versus the movement of the tendrils in a pea plant. So, children, whatever is the direction of stimulus in a touch me not plant, it will fold in one particular manner only. That means it shows a nastic movement. That is, no matter the direction of the stimulus is, the response will always be in a similar pattern, in a similar direction. But in the tendrils of a pea plant, children, they don't show nastic movement, they show trophic movement. That is, the direction where it is touched, it will move in that direction. Alright children, I hope this is clear. I hope children you were able to understand all the explanations. You were able to revise the topics with me. I will see you soon. Till then, stay happy and be curious.